Get started a little early, but not too much early, maybe a minute early. We'll have votes later, so I'll be running back and forth, and we've got a number of senators will be coming in between the votes or maybe even before the votes, so I wanted to get started. I want to thank everyone for being here. I know many of you traveled a great distance to be here, and for those who have lived with this challenge, the challenge of black lung and all the implications of that, you've traveled an even further distance to be here today, and so have your families. I'm especially honored to have President Cecil Roberts here and to have some comments from him in a few moments. I'll just make some brief opening statements, and then we'll move to the members of our panel as folks arrive, and we're grateful for this opportunity. I wanted to start with an observation that I've always made about the coal communities. Many of you heard of the novelist Stephen Crane. He wrote The Red Badge of Courage. But when I think of Stephen Crane, I think of an essay he wrote in the late 1800s about a coal mine near my hometown of Scranton. He described that coal mine as a place of inscrutable darkness. And he talked about all the ways that you could die in that coal mine. And he was describing the horror of what happened in those days. And I know that's, since he wrote that, it's about 125 years ago. And we know that things have changed. But frankly, for the workers, not nearly enough. So many families have endured so much from the labor. And we have to recognize today what you have contributed to your country. You kept your promise. You kept your promise to your employer, the company. You kept your promise to your family to work hard year after year, and in some cases, decade after decade. Many of you had to keep your promise to your country in terms of serving, whether it was in World War II or Korea or Vietnam or thereafter. So you kept all your promises to your family, your companies, and to your country. It's about time that your government keeps its promise to you. That's why we're here to talk about this issue today. So, what were those contributions? There's no way I could summarize them. But you powered our factories and our homes. You fueled decades of prosperity by doing some of the most difficult work imaginable. Work that I couldn't do and most members of Congress couldn't do for a half an hour. And in return, your nation promised you that they would keep you safe at work and support you if your decades of work took a toll on your health. And that promise is yet unfulfilled. Another way of saying that is that promise has been broken. Now we're facing a resurgence of black lung disease at the same time as the Black Lung Benefit Trust Fund is running out of money to cover those benefits. So the time for talk is over. It's time for action. Let me go through some of the things we got to do. First of all, I have the Black Lung Benefits Improvement Act, which would help coal miners and their families, number one, access benefits, number two, strengthen those benefits, number three, cut down on unacceptable wait times. Later this Congress will be reintroducing essential legislation to strengthen safety laws and ensure that those who break them are punished. They're imposed, or that there is imposed, a measure of accountability. So we have lots to do today, and I will cut my remarks short because of the time. I want to first and foremost introduce someone who needs no introduction to anyone in this room, but I want to say to Cecil Roberts, thanks for being here, thanks for your advocacy, and thanks for your presence here today on behalf of miners and their families, but also as a member of the United States Senate, I want to welcome you to the Senate, and thanks for your time with us today. And I may interrupt to have both Senator Brown and Senator Kane. Who is first?
Cecil. Senator Brown. Let the senators go first, I think.
I'll do it in alphabetical order. Senator Brown.
Thank you all for being here. And you're seeing these camo shirts. I've seen you all walk these halls. A lot of miners from Ohio and Kentucky and West Virginia and Southwest Virginia and Western PA. And thanks for being here. We wouldn't have come nearly this far if you weren't here every single week. I always will remember when Cecil, when Bob and Tim and all of us did these rallies at the Capitol grounds in February, and it was 20 degrees, stand outside, people speaking then, and all of you rallying, and then in August, so we always pick the hottest days in the summer and the coldest days in the winter, and that's the way Cecil thinks, but thank you for that. And one of the things that always came through was how Cecil at each one of these events would say, how many of you are veterans? And so many coal miners in this country, so many UMWA members are veterans, and you'd leave the mines and go to war, and then come back to the mines and provide the electricity to keep our country going in wartime and peacetime. So first of all, mostly thank you for that, and I think we're getting closer on our pension bill to fix these pensions for the mine workers and the Teamsters and the carpenters. And mine workers are going to go first because yours are really more at risk and because Cecil's raised hell better than anybody else here. Last thing I want to mention, I have two other things. One is Bob and Tim and I were on the floor last week along with Senators Manchin and some others demanding Congress act to stop the pension and health care cuts facing thousands of miners. You keep showing up, we're going to keep fighting that way, and that will matter in my state of Ohio and Virginia and Pennsylvania and West Virginia and Kentucky. Last thing I wanted to mention, 20 years ago, I was at a Workers' Memorial Day rally on the banks of Lake Erie, mostly attended by steel workers. It's that part of the state where there's a lot of steel, and I was given this pin that I've worn for 20 years. It's a depiction of a canary in a bird cage, and you know better than anybody in this country what that means. The mine workers took the canary down in the mines. If the canary died, you had no government that cared enough to help you. And in those days, 1900, you didn't have a union strong enough to help you. And that's really what this whole battle is all about. It's about union members in their union halls and in the mines and in the factories. It's about ethnic organizations and their halls. It's about church groups. It's about civil rights advocates and advocates for children fighting for Medicare and Social Security and pensions and overtime rule and minimum wage and worker safety and fighting on the issue of black lung and the issue of Agent Orange for so many of you that served in Vietnam and in the Iraq burn pits, so many of your members that fought in Iraq, in the war in Iraq. So thank you, thank you, thank you. If you love your country, you fight for the people and make it work, and there's nobody that does that better than UMWA. So Cecil, thanks, buddy.
Senator Kame from Virginia.
Well, hey, everybody, I want to be quick because I want to hear Cecil. Cecil's one of my favorite people in public life, and we've been through a number of these battles together. Just two comments. First, we're celebrating a big anniversary, the 30th anniversary of the Pittston strike in Virginia, which started in the winter and went all the way into the winter of '89, went all the way into, I guess, the winter of 1990. And, it was such a pivotal event in labor history and especially in Virginia history. And I just remember the famous quote from then UMW President Trumka when he says, boy, the benefits for workers out on strike are dwindling, dwindling, dwindling. The longer as this goes, how long can you hold out? And the answer was 1 day longer than Pittston. We'll hold out 1 day longer. And it was an amazing thing, and we're in the midst of that 30th anniversary, which makes this a really important time to have this discussion. You've got a little bit of wind at your back because of your strong advocacy, and together with UMW, we were able 2 years ago in 2017 to get a resolution on the healthcare side for so many of you, but we were within 5 days. And I remember sitting with some of you down in Castlewood, end of April 2017, 5 days before the end of the month, where healthcare benefits were going to expire. That was one of the most memorable meetings I've ever done in 25 years in public life because people were at the very edge and didn't know what the answer was. And I could say, I think we're going to have a solution, but when people say, can you guarantee? I said, I can't guarantee you, but you're sending me back to Washington with a lot of motivation. Well, we have to have the same sense of motivation now around both getting the excise tax back to where it needs to be to protect the black lung situation is getting more and more intense as the silica content is higher and where some of the mining is being done. And then second, we have to use the same strategy that we got for the healthcare solution to find the pension solution. Sherrod has done amazing work on all of the pension plans, the multi-employer pension plans, and that's so very important. There's a bill that's going to pass in the House. There's going to be a Senate version of it that Sherrod's going to be leading. We'll work on that. But as we pointed out when I was with some of you today, folks on this side of the room, the mine reclamation funds, the fact that those funds are there and that because of, they've been sort of undersubscribed, so there is an available source of funding, that provides a potential solution on the mine workers that's really, really helpful. So anyway, we're here to hear your stories so that we can better advocate with our colleagues and make the day sooner rather than later. Thank you all for being at the Capitol.
Thanks, Senator Kane. I want to thank both senators for being here and for being in this fight a long time. They weren't, they didn't just arrive here today. They've been at this for years. Cecil, thank you for your leadership.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And let me start by thanking Senator Casey for hosting this event. He has been a long-term champion for workers, not only in the state of Pennsylvania, but workers all across the United States. And he and I have been friends for a long time, and I hope that we're going to be friends for about another 40 years at least. That's about right. That'll put me over about 100 and some years old. So thank you so much, Senator Casey. I want to comment on the other two senators here and make a point, if I might. Senator Brown has been a champion, obviously, for our pension fight, and it's not only our pensions, but it's all workers. But he's also, obviously, been a champion for workers' health and safety, the right to organize, every issue that you could think of working-class people. He's been there, and we're more like people who lived in the same community or something, as opposed to a senator and a president of a union. So thank you for your friendship for over these many years. And my friend Tim Kaine is, I first met him, I think he was mayor of Richmond, if I remember. Now, he may not remember this, but I do. When it was first being brought around to the AFL-CIO when he was going to run for office, and he comes into executive council, and you get about 2 or 3 minutes to say something, and unless somebody holds their hands up and says something for you, and I did, and I never regretted that. And he ended up running for vice presidency of the United States, and quite frankly, I wish he'd have won that. We'd all been better off, and maybe wouldn't even been in this room today, and some of these problems be fixed. So if you give all three of these senators a round of applause, I think they really earned it. And I always remind workers, we got to make sure who our friends are. And these are our friends here. And we have people like Senator Manchin that's worked his heart out. I was with this brother a couple weeks ago, and he started a show in his testimony, and he had everybody in tears. And I just want to mention on the front row, our Secretary Treasurer, who was 37 years old, he's going to be around a little bit longer than me. Levi Allen is here, and and we have one of our vice presidents, Donnie Sams, from down in Pennsylvania with us. I won't stick your hand up. Thank you. But let me take a minute or two to just talk about the people I see every day that happen to be in this room. And I think the point about veterans, people with pneumoconiosis, widows of people with pneumoconiosis, retirees who've earned a pension, retirees who've earned a health care, widows who are entitled to a pension. We're all the same people here. Because everywhere I go, people know this. I don't care if I'm in Kentucky, West Virginia, or if I'm out in the state of Washington or California, I have veterans stand up who are members of the labor movement. And one of the things we've got to take back is the fact that every time there's a war to be fought, They don't necessarily go to the Chamber of Commerce to get those people to fight the wars. They come down to the coal fields and the steel mills and the auto towns, and that's where the heroes exist. And that's the people who stand up every single time that America's got a problem. It's us that stand up. And I'm so proud of the fact that we are patriots. And we need to be talking about that more than we do and acting like this is our country. And our country has depended on us for 100 years, and all we're asking for out of our government is to stand up for us for a change here. It's so easy if you're a billionaire or a millionaire or a corporation now to come up here on Capitol Hill and get something within a matter of weeks. But we've been coming up here on this issue of black lung and this issue of pensions forever. And I want to remind everybody of something. This is a sad, sad story when it comes to pneumoconiosis. We mined coal in this country for 156 years before we even came to the grips with the fact that black lung existed. We would not acknowledge as a government or as a country that there was such a thing as pneumoconiosis. 156 years, excuse me. And we wouldn't have it now if the Farmington mine in northern West Virginia hadn't exploded and killed 78 miners, and people had to watch that on television in every state of the union. If that had not happened, we would not have a Coal Act that protects miners when they go underground. And if it hadn't been for 40,000 miners walking off the job in West Virginia in 1969 and would not leave Charleston until the legislature came to grips with the fact that there was a thing called black lung. And that had a lot to do with the changes that were made in the United Mine Workers Union. So we're all tied together here. I am on the board of a clinic in West Virginia that was built by coal miners. It's called the Cabin Creek Clinic. We've gone from one location to about 6. And we're proud of the work. No one walks out of there. I don't care if you got an insurance card or not. You can get treated in one of those clinics if you're flat broke. And that's the way it ought to be in this country. You shouldn't measure somebody by how much money they got in their bank account, because all lives are precious. And I know we act like sometimes the people who are rich are more important than the rest of us. I don't look at it that way, because I think people that's worked hard all their lives and given their lives so this country can prosper are the people that are really important. And the people who came up here on these buses to fight for these black lung benefits and get attention from the United States Congress, you have my utmost support. And there's going to be a little, I understand, rally demonstration, or whatever you want to call it out here. And when this is over, I'll come out there with you, because this is where I come from. But I want you to think about something that we know. And when we testified here about 2 weeks ago, we got a tremendous amount of publicity out of this, and we should have, because we pointed out that people are dying. People are dying. People are dying, and some people on the other side of this issue keep saying, we need to wait a while. That's what we hear. We need to wait because we don't have all the facts. So let me give you the facts. In Kentucky, Virginia, and West Virginia, there's something going on in these coal mines, and I'm going to tell you what it is. It's silica. It's exactly what it is, and any doctor that knows anything about this issue will tell you the problem in that area, those areas, that geographic area you can draw a circle around. We know what's wrong. We're cutting into this rock, and people are sucking it down into their lungs, and they're dying, and they're sick and 30-some years of age, and the people up here in Congress said, let's wait a while, are the same exact people when Upper Big Branch exploded and killed 29 people, so we don't want to act right now because we don't know what happened. Well, now, it's 9 years later. Do they know what happened? We knew what happened within a week of that explosion. So we have to force Congress to act. I hate to tell you that. You've got friends up here, and you need to identify your friends. But you got people up here who don't want to do anything, nothing. And if they could get back to it, they'd go right back to what we had before 1969, and that's nothing. No laws, nothing to protect workers, and we're not going back to that. We had a strike that Senator Kane alluded to in 1989, and I made a speech early on and said, we're not going backwards here. We're not going to go back to those days, and that's what this fight is all about. I got two of my friends, they're brothers right there, by the way. all the way from around Harlan, Kentucky, or Lynch, Kentucky, by the way. So I'm going to shut up because I could talk all day about this, and nobody wants to hear me all day here. But I'm going to tell you, if you want to do something about this, it ain't going to happen the first trip up here, and you've got to make people do the right thing. And the one thing that you've got when you leave here, and I'm going to tell you, what's been the most effective thing about these people in camo, and on every national network, they talk about how long they've been coming up here and what they've been coming for. Because they are persistent, they won't back down, they won't turn around, and they know we're going to quit when we get our pension straightened up, and you can't quit until you get this black lung problem fixed. Well, Senator Manchin, you should have come earlier. I bragged on you a little bit, but thanks for coming.
I'm gonna move to Senator Manchin just as long as Cecil. Do you have anything more to say? I don't want to interrupt him. There's good momentum there. We're pleased by Senator Manchin's presence here, grateful for his work on these issues. Senator Joe Manchin, State of West Virginia.
Hey.
Thank you all. Thank all of you. And I never, ever want to follow Cecil. It's not a good place to be. Anyway, let me say this. You all coming makes all the difference in the world of what happens here. They put real people, they put lives, they put people's faces to names. It makes a difference. And when they see the hardest working people that basically have sacrificed, and for generation after generation, basically sacrificing to have the greatest country on earth, I said, you know, we're so proud. We've mined the coal that made the steel, that built the guns and ships, that built the factories. We built America. You really did. Everyone should say a prayer for a coal miner. Every night I say that. And you've never asked for anything you haven't worked for and paid for. I've never had a coal miner ask me, can you get this for me? Can I just get what I've earned and what I work for? That's all they've ever asked for. And that's all we're fighting for. We've got bills right now in place that'll take care of everything that's wrong. And all we're asking for is Mitch McConnell to put it on the table, let us vote. It gets on the table to vote, it'll pass. So right now, you know, we're fighting the pensions, we're fighting the black lung, we fought for health care, we got that. But we've got to fight to change the bankruptcy laws. Financial institutions should not be in front of a human being that did the work. Should never be in the front line. And that's what we're fighting to change. So we can get this done, and the working people of America come here and fight with us. And if they do what the coal miners have done, by golly, we'll get it done. Because whenever it gets tough, we just dig a little deeper. Thank you all. God bless you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Joe Manchin, for being here. I'm going to turn to our first panel member today. I want to thank Linda Adams for being here. She's from the state of Kentucky, and we're grateful that she's willing not just to be here, but to tell her story. And unfortunately, it's a story of loss, but it's important for us to be here today to hear her story and to take action accordingly. Linda, we're honored you're here. Thanks for making the effort to be here.
Thank you. For beginners, this was my husband. He died from black lung. He was 53 years old when he passed away. Black lung is not a grandpa's disease. I don't care who says what. Tomorrow will make a year since I lost a nephew to black lung that was 52 years old. Up in Pike County, where I'm from, we have miners that's 30, 35 years old that's got black lung. Black lung system needs to be changed. The silica dust needs to be controlled. The regular dust needs to be controlled. Laws need to be changed, making it easier for miners to get their black lung. Once they get sick, they're having to jump through hoops and stuff. I am thankful for everybody in this room today and on this panel, and I'm also thankful for God to let me come today. Two weeks before my husband died, he made me make a promise to him, and he was dying. He knew he was dying. He said, I don't care what you do. I don't never want you to give up on black lung. He said, because there's always somebody out there beating those coal miners out what they deserve.
Amen to that.
When my husband, before he passed away, and I've got proof of every bit of this. He had 4 biopsies. One biopsy from a coal miner should be enough for that coal miner to get his benefits, right? I've got 4. When before he passed away, he had told me, he said, I know I'm dying from black lung. I want you to have an autopsy done. The day that he died in the hospital, ARH hospital at home, and they do them absolutely free autopsies. So they done that autopsy. And I've got the report on that. But let me tell you before I got this report what happened. He died on Saturday morning at 1:33 in the morning. Everything was shut down. When I come outside, his buddy from the funeral home was there, and he told me, he said, this is the deal, I done talked to him. We have to go ahead and have the funeral the first 2 days, and instead of burying him, we have to undress him, take him back to another county to do this autopsy. It's through the same hospital. After they done the autopsy, he brought him back, we dressed him and had the burial. The guy from the funeral home gave me a blank death certificate, And I took it and read it to the doctor. And he stood and hugged me, and he told me, he said, you know he died from black lung. And it says he died from co-workers' pneumocosis. When we got the autopsy report back from the first doctor, co-workers' pneumocosis, the insurance company wasn't happy with that. Yeah. They jerked around and said, oh, no, he did not. He did not have black lung. Everything in the world, yeah, his lungs shut down. His heart shut down because his lungs shut down. I'm going to tell you, minor, something that you may not know. You may have black lung right now, but down the road, that black lung can turn into cancer. Black lung is a form of cancer. My husband also had cancer. It come from his lungs into his throat. I had got a hold of another law firm in Resurges, ACLC. They're here, bless their heart. And they sent all my information, looked at it. They sent, this is an autopsy report from a doctor in Canada. He's a world-renowned pathologist. His name is Francis Green. It says my husband died from black lung. So when the judge ruled, he ruled in my favor. Okay? The way he ruled in my favor, the insurance company was not happy. I mean, not happy at all. Because I'm going to tell you what happened. My husband signed up in 2008. He died in 2013, at 53 years old. The law judge went over all this information and said, that man died, he should have had his black lung the day he signed up. He awarded me his black lung all the way back till that day. 4 days later, after I got the award letter, my lawyer called me and told me I'd won. 4 days later, I get a letter saying, we're not paying. That's right. Exactly. We're not paying you. We're going to appeal it. So it went before a review board. They started paying me monthly checks. But now they're still nitpicking because all this evidence. Now, guys, think about all this evidence. They want another judge to look at it because they think this judge was off his rockers and been on the bench, a federal judge. You all have got a hard fight ahead of you. But I got news for you. As long as there's breath in my body, amen, I will be fighting for every one of you in this room.
Amen. That's true.
Linda, thanks for bringing your story here. Wow. We're grateful.
Thank you. Thank you.
You give us a lot to be inspired by your passion, and a lot for others out there to think about.
Thank you.
They need a little reminder from people like you. I know the vote has started. We're a couple minutes into the first vote. By the way, is it this vote, the 9/11 vote, or the next vote? But we're going to be, yeah, all of them. We're going to be voting on the 9/11 legislation, which in a similar way has been delayed too long for people suffered there. So that's the vote we're getting to. But because I'll exercise one prerogative, because not everyone here is from Pennsylvania, but some are. So Bob, I'll turn to you first if you want to start your comments, and then we'll go to both sides. Thank you. Yeah, put that on there.
Okay, thank you. I want to thank Senator Casey for sponsoring this event, the other senators that appear here before us. I also want to thank Linda Glagola. Linda runs a healthcare clinic for minors with black lung in Canonsburg, Pennsylvania. She serves 700 minors in the tri-state area. She does an absolutely fabulous job. She is the only one that I know in the tri-state area that is there to help minors with black lung. So thank you, Linda, and thank you for inviting me to this event. I certainly appreciate it. I wanted to make a few comments about black lung itself. I'm afflicted with black lung. My story is that I'm a 40-year coal miner from western Pennsylvania. I worked 40 years in the Pittsburgh 8 seam. I'm not familiar with the seams that you all have worked in. I know you have some low coal. I hear about sand rock. I've worked with sand rock the last 8 years of my mining career. I was on longwalls in a coal mine in western Pennsylvania, run by Consult. It was 84 Mine. 84 Mine was a very difficult coal mine, probably the worst conditions I had ever seen in my 40 years, and I probably have a total of 20 years on longwalls. They cut sand rock there. They had difficulty staying in seam. I don't know anybody that's familiar with longwalls. If you cannot stay in seam, you ride up on coal, you fracture, you start cutting the rock, you have major problems, okay? Some of the other things that bother me about this that I'm sure all of you can relate to, those of you especially in longwall. This isn't a, people say this mining technology, it certainly is great. There's no question about it. Shields run on shear initiation. Heck, they can even run a shear on automation as well. They supposedly don't need any people to operate a shear. They tried that doesn't work at all. But there are a lot of issues in longwall mining procedures, how you cut coal, how you cut roof. These are the things that have to be looked at to cut down on the black lung incident rate. And anyone that's worked on a longwall, I'd be happy to explain some of that. It's too lengthy to go into now. But furthermore, what I wanted to talk about was how does black lung affect me personally? Well, at age 58, I was diagnosed with cancer. I had 2 surgeries. I had 35 sessions of radiation. During my radiation treatments, we were moving a longwall, and I went back to work while undergoing radiation. But I noticed probably the last 8 years that I was on a longwall and breathing the dust, as soon as I got in the dusty atmosphere, my nose would run. I don't know if anybody's experienced that, but it's something that's real. So if that's ever happened to you, I'm sure that's something that you all may have experienced. You know that something's not right. There's an irritation there, okay? And we have to look at how we control dust in a coal mine. So that's important. That's most important to me, because if in fact we don't do something, if MSHA doesn't do something, and we get a resolution to this, there won't be any coal mining going on in this country. I'll guarantee you, won't be any coal mining going on. That's how critical this situation is. So the effects, loss of income, 58 years old, okay? My kids are through college. I'm looking to retire. and I get some bad news. I know at that point in time, I can't fight two things at the same time. I can't go back to work because I won't live another 3 years. Can't do it. So my income is drastically reduced, as opposed to me being able to work to age 62, which I initially hoped I could do. You can forget that, you know. If I worked to age 62, I would not be sitting in this chair right now. I can guarantee you that. So those years that you invest, you save your money to provide for your family, your kids, your grandchildren. You better have made some prior provisions to do that, or you'll be broke. You'll go broke. Shortness of breath. Pretty self-explanatory. And everybody here that has black lung experiences shortness of breath. I don't care if you get up from your couch watching TV and go in and get a bowl of ice cream. By the time you get back to your chair, that's just about all you can do. You can't. You want to mow your lawn? Good luck with that. I had to buy a tractor this year. I struggled for years mowing 6/10 of an acre at my house with a push mower. It took me 9 hours. I had a chair with me all the time. I'd make 2 passes, sit down. I had to buy a tractor this year. Now, since I can't mow my grass, that cuts out physical activity. You no longer are able to do the things physically that you once were able to do. And that exacerbates everything you're trying to work for, to maintain your physical activity. And you can't do it. You're physically unable to do it. Your quality of life, well, everybody here can see that too. Most of you are the age where you have grandchildren. Well, let's have the grandchildren over for a picnic this Sunday. Grandchildren come over and they want to play kickball, or they want to do wiffle ball, right? They want to play a little baseball or throw a baseball. No matter what they want to do, you can't participate. You have to say, I'm sorry, honey, I can't run, you know. I can't even throw a ball too well. You can try. You're not going to do it too long. They don't understand that. They're young. They don't recognize what you're going through. But it's real to all of us, every one of us. Then, finally, the uncertain future that we all have. I don't know about you all. I'm 71. With my present condition, I'm not certain how long I'm going to live, but I'm going to try to be active, to do what I can to survive, to eat well, to love my family and friends, and hope for the best. And I hope and pray for each and every individual in here that you can cope with this disease, make the most of it, and move on with your lives. Thank you.
Robert, we want to thank you for
Thank
being
you,
here.
sir.
I hope I called you Bob earlier. Is that okay?
That's okay.
Okay.
No,
We
sure.
want to thank Bob for his testimony coming from Pennsylvania and making the trip to be with us. As you know, two of us have left to vote. I know Senator Brown and I have to go soon for the first vote. But before I go, I want to make sure that Gary Hairston is next. And Gary, we're grateful, and Cecil Roberts is a big fan of yours, as you just expressed. So you have the floor.
I just want to thank the syndicates for letting me be here today. I'm telling you what, it's hard. When you can't breathe, you want to do stuff you want to do. I was 48 years old when I had to quit working in the coal mine. I was trying to figure out how I was going to get back.
But the doctor told me, said, Gary, if you go back to the coal mine, within 2 years, you're going to be on oxygen. But I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to take care of my family. See, we were brought up that the man take care of your family. And when I see my wife walk out the door, because I can't go to work, I'm telling you, I felt so bad. I didn't want to live. I watched my grandkids. I watched them play. I got a great-granddaughter. She said, come on, Papa, let's play. I tried to do that. I said, I can't do no more, baby. She keep on pulling, come on, Papa. And I'm telling, I can't do it. People, I go up and down my stairs. They say, why are you breathing so hard? Everything I do, I got to do in moderation because I know I can't do nothing in a hurry. I said, if somebody won't jump on me, I can't run. And I can't do nothing. I said, maybe a couple of swings, then I'm going to fall down. They can do what they want to because I can't do nothing. What made it even worse, I used to be able to cut my grass in my front yard. I got to ride more, but I had to use a lawnmower to cut my front. I had a separate pail. Usually I can do that and without even stopping. But the other day I had to stop twice just to cut a little bit. And I wondered, how long am I last before I can't do nothing? I got a lot of people say, Nikki, you need to be on oxygen every day. I don't want to be on oxygen every day. I use it at nighttime. They say, you need it because it could be your heart. I say, I don't want to die depending on something that I got to rely on. I'm telling you what, if you ain't never had to ask nobody for nothing, and then you turn around and got to start depending on people. And I'm going to thank you, Senators, for trying to get this Black Lung bill passed, and our retirement passed, because I'm telling you what, and we rely on the government they say the government take care of the government can't take care of our Black Lung. Once they run out of money, then what we going to do? We having trouble right now where the federal government trying to pay some of the medication that we're taking. And we jumping through hoops to do that. If I wanted one of the little small oxygen tank, Black Lung won't pay for that. My oxygen got to be down to around 58 before they'll get that. My Medicare had to come in. Medicare paying for my oxygen right now. It ain't the Black Lung paying for that. Because they say my wind ain't bad enough for them to start taking it over. Yes, they give me my medicine. But I'm telling you what, when the company had it, they pay for 3 months at a time. Because the federal government taking over, they got to give you every month. They got to send it every month because it just ain't me that got to have it. It's a lot of other coal miners going through the same thing. Then I'm looking at these coal miners. In the coal mine 5 years, and they just in worse shape than me. I got a younger brother right now. I'm glad he breathes worse than I do. And when he tried to go to the state to get money, they say there ain't nothing matter with it. So every time we go somewhere, our state won't even help us. They try to find every kind of way they can to keep from paying for us what we need. They told my brother one time, we'll start paying for your medicine. They called month later and say, well, you all right, we don't need to pay for your medicine. So I don't know what I'm glad my brother come out of the coal mine because if he stayed in there any longer, I don't believe he'd be living. And I worry about him. I still got another brother that's working. So I'm telling you what, I feel sorry for the coal mine as I listen to what's going on here. It don't seem like nobody helped, but I want to thank the senators that cared about us to try to get something passed. Because nobody else ain't worried about us. They just say, we just coal miners, hey, we ain't work you, we don't need you no more. So I'm just thanking you, Senator Casey, and everybody here that come to represent. I thank our president for everything that he's doing. If it wasn't for him, what would we do? He's constantly running and working for us. He got everybody on the line working for us. So I'm asking y'all, let us talk to us and let's get on them and stay on them. Because if we get a few of the Republicans to come in, our president said he helped with coal miners, but I ain't seen him try to do nothing for us yet. Now, one thing, he said he for the coal miners, he supposed to go down tomorrow. But what did he say about, I can't breathe? Why he ain't said nothing about my breathing? But he said I'm friend of the coal miners, so where is he at? Thank you, Senator.
God bless you, sir.
That was about as good as I've ever heard. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
You're 71. I thought you were a lot younger than that.
You thought what?
I thought you were younger than that.
I thought you were saying, I thought you're a lot older.
No, I wasn't going to say that.
So we're not done here. Please remain seated. This is going to be dangerous. They've left me in charge here. So we can all kind of figure out how dangerous that is. But one of the things I'd like to say that the people who are professionals and work in this field, whether they're attorneys that try to represent coal miners, doctors who try to treat coal miners, clinics that try to treat coal miners, lay advocates that try to help coal miners, they were sent here by God, the best I can figure, because they're a blessing. And one of our panelists here is a doctor, Morgantown, is that right? Dr. Pitsock, did I say that right? So let's hear from him, because I believe that I've worked with a number of these doctors. Dr. Cohen's my dear friend from Chicago, and most of you know him. He comes to our clinic conferences. He comes to our Black Lung conferences when he can, and he just pours his heart out on this, and I know you do too, Doctor. So we'd like to hear from you, please.
Well, thank you, Cecil, and thanks to everybody who's here. I tried to figure out what my role should be. I actually grew up in Pennsylvania and became a physician. About the last 46 years, treated patients and many coal miners, and that's one of the ways that I learned about it, but I also was interested in why we were having these diseases, so I've done a lot of research as well. And I think one of the things that I can do here today is try to get back to the facts, the reality. And you all know the suffering that miners and their families go through because you live that. And I can't add anything more to that. But there are some things that are floating around that maybe I call it misinformation about black lung that is just not true. And you need to keep that in mind when you hear people talking about what we need to do. Number one, black lung, as you hear, it's back, and it's back with a vengeance that it never had, as far as we can tell. As long as we've been monitoring miners in this country, we've never seen in Appalachia the severity, the rapid progression, and the prevalence of disease, what it is, and especially what we call progressive massive fibrosis, the very most severe form. And Cecil mentions Dr. Cohen and his group. They've been researching it and doing a wonderful job, and I've worked with them and still working with them. The disease is increasing in prevalence, especially in Appalachia, and we're seeing more massive fibrosis every year. As far as we can tell, this epidemic is skyrocketing, and there is no evidence that the disease is slowing down or is being prevented, or that the protections that are in place right now are going to stop this epidemic. Okay, that's very important to know. There are new dust regulations that came in about 4 or 5 years ago, been introduced, but just because a dust level is low, or reported dust level, I should say, is low, that doesn't mean that the miners are not inhaling way too much dust. We've looked, unfortunately, at a lot of autopsies, a lot of lung transplants where we take the old lungs that have been damaged, and biopsies, as was mentioned. And what do we see in the lungs? Massive quantities of silica dust, okay? Now, if, as been reported to MSHA over the last 50 years, the dust levels every year get lower and lower on average, why is the disease level going up? And why are the lungs full of dust? And the answer is that those dust levels can't really reflect, and I think the miners know this, they can't really reflect what you do every day. So we have to understand that miners in coal mining are being exposed to truly dangerous levels of silica dust, and that without addressing that directly, there's no reason to believe that this epidemic is going to go away. I think that's one of the most important things that you need to understand. Just if someone tells you, well, look, we've got the dust levels going down, and remember those are reported dust levels. They are not what the miner works in every single day. So don't be, let's say, a dreamer, or don't say, oh, well, I'm hopeful that we have this under control. The suffering and the misery that you hear about today is not something you want to be hopeful about. It's something you want to fix. So I think that my contribution here today is, number one, the science documents that there is an epidemic of black lung. You all know it, you live it. There are thousands of miners who have been affected by this most severe form of black lung. There's no evidence that this epidemic is over, that even though dust levels are going down, dust levels that we are reporting to the government, the miners' mining conditions we really don't believe can possibly be controlled, because the biology of silicosis hasn't changed in the last 20 years. Those lungs are filled with dust because the miner was inhaling much more dust than is healthful. So I would encourage you all to keep these things in mind, and a couple other things. Number one, a lot of people talk about respirators in the coal mines, but you all know this. Respirators are very difficult to wear. They have to be designed for the level of exposure that is predictable. In a mine, you never know today or tomorrow where you're going to be exposed, what you're going to be exposed to. All health and safety professionals say respirators are not reliable for protecting the health of lungs in coal mines and other types of mining environments, okay? So that's not, if someone comes up with that, you have to say, no, we cannot wear respirators when we're on our hands and knees, when we need to communicate quickly with our buddies, and when we know that those respirators will not be reliable to protect us. So that's number one. Number two that you sometimes hear is that, oh, it's all tobacco smoking. And I will tell you, I searched in the literature very extensively using all the major databases. Has any smoker ever gotten massive pulmonary fibrosis? Not one, okay? Not one who wasn't exposed to way too much dust, okay? So that is another myth that it keeps popping up that we need to not accept, okay? I'm not telling anyone to smoke, don't get me wrong. But if you want to blame our current epidemic of lung disease, it doesn't have anything to do with smoking. Okay, I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you. I'm happy to continue, but I just wanted to kind of go over those 3 or 4 things, because you're going to go out and you're going to be asked to do these different things to try to address this epidemic. And remember, these myths are not going to help you. So thank you very much.
Senator Kane, would you like to be the chairman?
Well, I will be the chair, but we are voting on this 9/11 compensation bill. We have 3 votes, and we're running back and forth to do it. So I left right as Bob was finishing. Gary, did you have a chance already?
Yes.
Okay, well, Listen, I mean, we could, Senator Casey is going to come back, and he's going to come back and do some closing comments. We could open it up, take questions, take advice.
I got a couple of
President?
things,
Great.
if you
Go.
don't mind. So, after many, many, many years, the labor movement fought really hard for probably 20, 30 years for a silica standard to be promulgated by OSHA. And that happened. But of all things, that silica standard did not apply to coal mines.
Yeah.
That has to be promulgated by MSHA. In our testimony here, I think it was a week before last, it got a lot of play across the country. We said it's time for MSHA to immediately promulgate a rule with respect to silica. Because if that doesn't happen, the number of people who are in here right this moment suffering from pneumoconiosis, or quite frankly, the worst form of progressive, I always have to look at my nose, or I don't get this right, massive fibrosis, is a result of, in our opinion, when I say our, I think this could probably held fairly across the board by the medical community, but silica that's causing this. So, number one, if you want to protect coal miners who still have a job from ending up with most severe forms of black lung, which, by the way, is fatal, and that hasn't been said here, but it needs to be said. Once you contract this level of pneumoconiosis, it's fatal. There's only one cure for that. Does anybody know what that is? It's a lung transplant. Do you know what that costs? $1 million. You know how long you live? 3 years on average. That's the statistics. There's no cure for it. And you can't take you can take medication, but you'll die from it. So once you contract this highest level, worst level of pneumoconiosis, it's fatal. And that's what we tried to impress on Congress here a couple weeks ago. This is fatal. It's going to take your life quickly. Something has to be done now. And how hard is it for MSHA to promulgate a rule that says, hey, that silica standard that OSHA has at least should be applied to the coal industry? So we don't have some 35, 40-year-old miner 2 years from now walking around trying to breathe, needing a lung transplant. You've got to, first of all, stop this and from anyone else contracting this most severe form of pneumoconiosis. Now, let me speak in general terms. What's been wrong with this program, or there's a lot wrong with it, but from the very beginning, what was the worst thing that happened coming out of the 1969? We were so happy to have that act. We placed in the hands of the coal companies the enforcement, basically, of how much dust is in the mines. And they were in charge of this program. And it's like saying, we don't need state police anymore. When I speed, I'll call them up and tell them. And so they can write me a ticket and I'll pay it. And if you go back, I have that in my testimony, there has been massive fraud that has been discovered periodically since the passage of the 1969 Act. You remember the white centers? That was part of the fraud here. The white centers was as clear that they were not taking the correct readings when miners were supposed to be wearing these devices. They took the devices that were measuring how much dust you were in and hung them up in the Empire. So you cannot, if you want to stop this, you've got to stop allowing the coal companies to be the ones who determine how much dust you're breathing, along with promulgating a rule dealing with silica. Because it has not worked since 1969, and if it's 25 years from now, there's going to be more miners out there sick because the companies take the readings. The companies are the ones that are responsible for saying how much dust is in their mines. That has been wrong since the day this law was passed, and it's wrong this morning. It's time for MSHA to be responsible for taking these dust readings. Now, I think we just mentioned two things that seems to be common sense. Now, I have to tell you that there's a lot of people up here on this hill that don't have any common sense. None. Zero. If you can pass a rule that saves people's lives, how hard is that to figure out? I don't mean to be on my high horse here, but these seems to be things that don't cost a lot of money. But now let me tell you one that does cost some money. They should reinstate this tax that was forgiven in December of last year before this money runs out. Let me tell you, and Senator King can probably speak to this better than me. When you start running some kind of a deficit up here in a program that's going to be $15 billion by 2050, if they don't reinstate this tax, it's a tax they have been paying, and it just sunset, and Congress, the people in charge up here, not our friends, allowed it to sunset, and they had planned to reinstate it, but they never got around to it when time went by because of the government shutdown. The government shutdown came, and the government shutdown went, and now coal miners are being told, don't worry about this. You still got your benefits, right? But let me tell you, how long do you know, Dr. King used to make a speech about how long, right? And I've stolen that a few times. But how long do you think it's going to...
When they tell you not to worry about it, worry about it. And that's just a general rule up here.
So it won't be long. I don't know when it's going to be. Probably about past the election, but they're going to say, wait a minute, we're running a deficit here. We got to balance the budget. Now, they didn't balance the budget, and I'm probably about to be careful about what I'm going to say here. They didn't worry about balancing the budget when they gave away $1.5 trillion up here to rich folks.
Yeah, right.
I didn't say they got something for it. They gave it away, okay? Rich folks needed more money. Now, poor folks are up here now are sick, and now we got to balance the budget, okay? So we need to place in the hands of the MSHA, the enforcement of this program. We need a silica rule. We need to reinstate this tax. Those are three relatively simple things. And I want to say something here that maybe you haven't thought about a lot. There's all this talk about beating up President Obama's Affordable Care Act, and they make it a Democrat or Republican issue, and it's not. It's about whether people got health care or not, and whether they can afford it. But let me tell you something you should be concerned about, and Senator King knows this really well. Embedded in the Affordable Care Act is a 15-year presumption of having black lung. That's in the Affordable Care Act. And when that Affordable Care Act, if it gets wiped away by the federal courts, you no longer have a 15-year presumption in the law. You're back to proving you got black lung as opposed to somebody assuming that if you work that long in a mine, you must have pneumonia. Those are four relatively simple things that Congress, using some common sense, would fix tomorrow morning. Okay, it doesn't seem to be overly complicated, but what do I know? I was born 15 miles up a holler, right? So what do I know, all right? I got a little common sense, but you know what common sense is? When somebody's on strike, and I used to hear this story back when people struck a lot back in the coal fields, right? Coal miner got 5 kids and got 3 pork chops. That's all his wife's got. There ain't nobody up on this hill except the Democrats probably could figure out how to feed the family. You know what a wife of a coal miner does? She takes them pork chops and she cuts them up and she makes some gravy and feeds the whole family. That's just common sense, right? I probably didn't talk more, and I probably got everybody in trouble here while I was at it, but I believe Senator Casey plans on trying to make it, there he is. We're back. Magic.
Well, and I want to just do one thank you, because I need to now go do the vote that he just did. But could I have everybody who either volunteers or works for or is on the board of Black Lung Clinic stand up? Let's give them a big round. Anybody. You guys are really key to this effort. I'm going to hand it back over to my chair, but you know, when Cecil mentioned ideas and he said that it's just common sense, I said, yeah, there's your problem. That's the problem up here. The OSHA MEMSHA issue we should do right away, because these are agencies that are both under the Department of Labor. So if OSHA has done the standard and they've figured out the standard, I mean, how hard is it for MEMSHA to say you've already been through the whole process, we should do the same thing? So these are good suggestions. You know, pension and black lung, absolutely, but let's go further. No more self-regulation. Let's have a silica rule that really matters and that protects people in MEMSHA. So thanks for being up here today. Good ideas, and Bobby, thanks for hosting this.
Tim Kaine, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, give him a hand. Now, we're grateful for the senators who are here. Cecil, we're grateful for you too. I want to in particular thank those who made a presentation. I'll just have some closing comments. I want to thank Dr. Bosonic. I want to thank Bob Long. I want to thank Gary Hairston and Linda Adams, and all of you for being here, for taking the time to do this. I know you all have work to do. You can't just sit here and listen to me. But just wanted to make some brief comments. Number one thing I didn't do at the outset was to thank the Appalachian Citizens Law Center, who I didn't have a chance to say hello. Put your hand up if you're representing them. In the back, thank you. Anybody else? Everybody around the room. Thank you very much. That law center made it possible for us to do this, and we're grateful that they made that possible. I wanted to also say how much we appreciate the work that Senator Manchin's doing, because he's got his Minors Act, which is a separate bill from the black lung bill I have, but of course they're both critical. I wanted to just, in a very quick, short order, tell you about the Black Lung Benefits Improvement Act, though. Just some quick bullet points. Number one, would require full disclosure of medical information related to a claim, whether or not such information is entered as evidence. Number two, it'll prohibit unethical conduct by attorneys and doctors in black lung claims process, helping minors review and rebut potentially biased or inaccurate medical evidence developed by coal companies. Number three, will allow minors or their survivors to reopen their cases if they've been denied because a medical interpretation that has been subsequently discredited. And number four, establish a pilot program for NIOSH to provide unbiased evidence for the most severe black lung cases. Three more quickly, requiring the Department of Labor to develop a strategy to reduce the backlog of black lung benefit claims. Number five, restoring cost of living benefit increases for black lung beneficiaries and ensure cost of living increases are never withheld in the future. And finally, helping claimants secure legal representation by providing interim attorney's fees if minors prevail at various stages of their claim, allowing black lung clinics to use federal funds to help individuals file claims. So we got to get this done, right? Look, the closest I've come to these issues in a personal way is not very close at all. It goes back to the grandfather on my father's side. His name was Alphonsus L. Casey, worked in the anthracite mines. He worked there, just found the exact year as recently, 1905 to 1910. That's my only personal connection. But I'll say this about those who are from all the states represented here today. Whether they worked in the anthracite mines where I grew up or the bituminous mines in southwestern Pennsylvania and a lot of other states represented here, you understand this issue. You understand the reality for your families. And I referred earlier to Stephen Crane, the novelist. Here's how this 20-something-year-old novelist, who was dead at the age of 29, but here's how he described when he was in his early 20s, this mine in 1894. He talked about all the ways you could die in a coal mine. He said there, quote, "There's an insidious, silent enemy in the gas. If the huge fan wheel on top of the earth should stop for a brief moment, there is certain death. If a man escapes the gas, the floods, the squeezes of falling rocks, the cars shooting through little tunnels, the precarious elevators, the 100 perils, there usually comes to him an attack of miner's asthma that slowly racks and shakes him into the grave." So they called it miner's asthma in 1894, and I'm sure many years after that. Today we call it black lung or pneumoconiosis. It may not be 1894. It may not be 1905 to 1910. It may not even be 1969. But we still have a long way to go to fulfill the promise that our government made to everyone in this room and all your families, right? A long way to go. So for the government, it's promise-keeping time. And I want to let you go so you can do the work you do best, which is marching through those halls, knocking on those doors, and confronting senators and House members with this legislation, and Senator Manchin's and other legislation as well. So unless your president has something else to say, I will. I'll yield the floor to the president, Mr. President, Cecil Roberts.
The only thing, I have two things. One, I understand, and somebody who's coordinating this will have to help us with it, but we're going to gather up somewhere outside this room. But the thing I wanted to say is to thank my friend, Senator Casey, because he has been a tireless advocate, not only for coal miners, but all workers. And I started this out by saying we should recognize our friends as well as our enemies and who they are, right? Senator Casey is our friend, and his family goes back many years. I remember his father. I can't say that I knew him, but he was an advocate for workers also. And we need more people like Senator Casey up here on, that's all I'll say about that. And we need more people who are standing up for people who are sick, injured, fighting for their health care, fighting for their pensions, fighting for the right to be in a union, fighting for a right to the middle class. And he's been a tireless advocate for us. And with that, I'd like you to show your appreciation for him.
Thank you, Bill. God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. And McMurray's here, right?
Yeah.